and restaurants were dying like flies left and right. And I think there's a big problem in the industry now with, I look at my back end every single week, that turns into 7,000 real dollars, $5,000 to $8,000 every week. I'm like, until that goes down to like two, I'm not stopping that email. If this business isn't growing, if they're not more financially healthier as a result of this effort, then you're a glorified employee. And that's a hard pill to swallow. It sounds overly dramatic, but you gotta be willing to.
In this episode, we're going to be learning from one of the most successful independent restaurant operators in the country, who not only has built from one location to 12 locations since he started his restaurant business shortly after college, but who's also beginning to receive national acclaim for his successes in restaurants as a #1 best-selling author, and somebody that thousands of operators across the country look up to, whether it's from his educational seminars or even the White House inviting him recently as a small business entrepreneur of the year. And that person is Mike Bausch. It's somebody that I've been learning from since the beginning of my journey in restaurants 5 years ago, and who I've learned so much from over the past 5 years. So we're going to be talking about the biggest lessons that he's learned over his huge career in restaurants and what he'd advise a younger version of himself in order to accelerate his successes and develop an even stronger business than he has today. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. I'm very stoked to be here. I am not just saying that. I'm very stoked after 5 years of talking to you for that first time to be here to go into all of this.
Me too. So I'd love to start by the very beginning of your journey into the world of restaurants. I saw that at some point you were considering joining the armed forces, but you made a decision against that and then fell in love with the restaurant industry. So I'd love to better understand from your perspective how it was that you went into the world of restaurants.
Well, I didn't decide not to do the Marine Corps. I went to Officer Candidate School of the Marine Corps, which is for not, there's people who don't understand there's officer and enlisted. So I did this in the middle of college. I went into OCS just like my dad to be, my dad was a retired lieutenant colonel. I did that training at 175 pounds and then whittled away my body to 135 pounds, not knowing I had type 1 juvenile diabetes. So I did all of the Marine Corps' officer training, not knowing I had a debilitating disease. And it's because I was just being a stubborn bastard about it and never went to sick bay when I couldn't feel my face and was my mouth was super dry. Got out of the Marines, which you only do in the summer. Then you would become an official second lieutenant when you graduate college and go to what's called the basic school. Anyway, I get done and I'm like, I don't even want to walk upstairs. I was running up a 45-degree angle for miles, but I didn't want to walk upstairs. And I was staying with my brother at the time, just visiting him. And he said, let's check you out at the hospital. Something's weird about this, that you can't feel your face. And I thought I had some type of poisoning or something. I went in and they're like, do you do this and this and this and also this and this and this? Like with a cartoon chart. And I said, yeah. Why? You're the most obvious type 1 diabetic we've ever met. Like, you just been sitting at home near comatose all summer? No, I was in Officer Candidate School of the Marine Corps. And they were like, took a step back and I said, hey, I wanted to see like a 4 o'clock movie. Is that happening? I said, no. You're going to be in the ICU for the next 3 days, and we have to pump insulin into your body and take you out of shock. You should be comatose. And you said, your blood sugar is 1350. I said, okay, cool. What should it be? 80. It should be 80. And I was like, all right, well, and then it made me feel good because I was doing so very oddly good because I was so focused on being a high-level Marine, but my physical performance wasn't where I wanted it to be. Obviously, people showed up to OCS doing, 12 pull-ups, getting up to 20. I showed up doing like 18 and I started losing muscle and it validated, oh, wow, you sucked for a very solid reason. And then I felt a massive wave of relief and then a sense of purpose that like, oh, if I could do that, the whole world just kind of opened up to me. It didn't feel so hard. But on the flip side of that, the whole world also seemed, I started like see all these horror stories about people that die at 40, 38, and it lit a fire under my ass. Like, hey, if you want to do something with your life, nothing's guaranteed. So whatever you're going to do with that bucket list, better start that shit now and not hope that, hey, after law school. So I still went to law school and I went for 90 minutes and was like, no, this isn't it. And that same afternoon, my brother called me. He was getting transferred to Tulsa, Oklahoma from Florida as vice president of Alamo Rent-A-Car. He's 15 years older than me. And I said, he's like, you want to like start a restaurant with this bonus I'm getting in this town near Tulsa? And I said, let me fly out there and see what's up. Saw it for 3 days. And I said, this is what we're going to do. And I flew back, packed up my stuff, and drove halfway across America. And I've said I did not drive halfway across America to suck at making pizza. So that's what the goal was.
And why pizza specifically?
You know, people have some grand, like, want to have a grand, like, oh, I grew up loving pizza. And I always say, yeah, so did I. And everyone with half a soul. Like, it's not a high barrier to own a restaurant. I love pizza. I grew up on New York pizza. My dad would take me to pizzerias, but truly it was, my brother and I had both worked pizzerias. I had also worked fine dining. And then looking into this suburb of Tulsa called Owasso, all right, what do they not have? Well, they had 2 chain pizza places. An influx was coming in. That not only Alamo Rent-A-Car, National Rent-A-Car, Honeywell, Verizon, Capital One were all getting tax breaks to move to this suburb of Tulsa. So 10,000 people were descending upon this town. It was a massive opportunity. And we knew that they're coming from Florida. They're coming from St. Louis. Like, let's have a local pizza place. And it seemed like a smart idea. Again, I would highly not advise having a 22-year-old with limited restaurant knowledge open a full restaurant and just say, but that's what we did. And it was just a dedication to figure it out.
That is so interesting. So it was not just a love for pizza. It was identifying that within this new up and coming suburb of Oklahoma, Tulsa, that there was this opportunity to provide a really high quality artisanal independent pizzeria. And that's what led to the starting of this vision that you then had for Andolini's.
Yes, it absolutely true. And at first it wasn't like, it was just family fun. And hey, let's make the best pizza in Owasso, Oklahoma, which was not a high bar. I always operated with, if we act like, could this open up in Chelsea, Manhattan, which is where my family is originally from? If it could land there, then we're doing the right thing. But the hurdle was to fail upward. And that's the thing I've never had a problem with. I've never had a problem with screwing up. I'm like, okay, great. Like, I think some people are like, oh, look dumb. I didn't care. We'll keep failing, but as long as you don't stop, it's not failure. It's the upward spiral. Instead of a downward spiral, you're going to go up and, oh, this learned. Oh, that sucked. This learned. That sucked. Okay, but it's failure upward. And we did a lot of that. We threw a lot of things on the wall to see what stuck. But I never had an ego. And my brother, too. We never had an ego about that's it. That's what we are. Never change that. No. Anything could be modified. And that's why I think it kept growing.
Completely agree with that mindset. How do you balance that mindset of failing forward and being willing to make mistakes with also having very real financial constraints, like I'm sure you had, given that you were starting it with that bonus that your brother received?
Yeah. Well, everything in business is a trade-off of either time or money. So the beautiful thing about time is you know, especially being in my 20s, nothing else but this. If you could just keep going instead of an 8-hour day, if you could make it into like a 20-hour day, you can accomplish a lot. And not just, hey, that sucked today, but what did we learn from that? Which I call a basic leadership plan. You know, assess your surroundings, communicate a plan, delegate the plan, then execute and follow through on what worked and what didn't. That ability to self-reflect on the ideas of what occurred right and wrong, and okay, don't do that again. That worked, do that again, was a big part of it. That's why I think some people are stagnant, is they're not reflecting. Like, I did it, the customer's wrong. And it's not that. It's, okay, this didn't work out great. Why? And blaming yourself first, being a little bit of a masochist, to be hyper aware that this is not where it needs to be yet. But it can get there. I just have to eat it until then. And there is certain things that you just don't have the money for. But then when something does work, go with it. I think at first, one of the people involved in it early on wanted to do a billboard. Like, I don't think that's a good idea at all. Well, we need to do a billboard. Billboard's going to be the thing. And then it was like, that immediately wasted money. Let's never do that again. And that was like a good first lesson. Like, and we were burning cash the first year. And I knew that we were going to burn cash. That was part of the gig. And, I think my brother at the time was all, whatever happens, happens. As long as eventually it becomes something, that'd be cool. And if it doesn't, whatever. I was more of the mindset with, this will not fail, and everyone has a chip on their shoulder, especially in those first years. And the gritty, romanticized stories about the first years are awesome. I think a lot of people have those stories. I don't think I'm special for having those stories. And I'm not knocking. I think there's a lot to be said about those early years. But the true change is not being so, look at me, I did so many hours. It's the ability to finally delegate out and systemize. Because I'm not impressed by the guy who's 20 years deep, who's like, I still make the dough every day. Unless that brings you joy, it's a failure. You're not doing this right. Unless it brings you joy. If you're like, I just find so much passion in it, and all my KPIs are set up and all my staff is trained, and then I love going in early and making dough. That's beautiful. But if you're like, no one else I can trust, you're a dummy. You're someone who doesn't trust people and has a massive ego. You think it's hard work. It's not. It's ego that I need to be needed. They need me. I'm the only one. And then I always, I'm very, extremely thankful for having type 1 juvenile diabetes. I'm extremely thankful that I went into Officer Candidate School of the Marine Corps, because it's not just enlisted where you're stuck here for 4 years. It's leadership training. And I saw how much you can get out of 17, 18, 19-year-olds. So when you're like, they can't case sausage, I'm like, we depended on 19-year-olds to defeat the Nazis. They could case sausage. Get over yourself. It's that need to be needed that is a massive problem for the typical entrepreneur. I'm the one who did this, as opposed to we are the ones accomplishing X.
Did you ever have that need to be needed yourself and then shake yourself out of it? Or were you just naturally looking to systematize from day one?
I think I felt a guilt about it at first. I never wanted to automatically delegate, but there's a level of like, I need to get over the imposter syndrome, which I never felt that much of, but I need to show that I'm willing to work harder than anyone else in the room. They don't know that yet. It's inferred now, but when you're new, you're like, you want to show that you're willing to outwork everyone, which is good. I'm not opposed to that. But then when I was opening up our second store 6 years in, and I was like, okay, I got to train all these guys and then go back to the other store and train those guys at the first store. And my manager at the time looked at me, he's like, you've trained guys to train. No, but I should be the one to train. He's like, if you don't trust them to train, this will never grow. And you've trusted them and you're paying them, so let them win too. I was like, oh, you're right. Because at first you're like, no, I'll do it to show how much I can help. But you're also not letting others win. Not letting others post up something. And that was a big epiphany. Like, okay, I'm actually holding them back too because of this. I'm not doing them a favor. And then I describe it now with, this will shake people out of the mindset. I say, are you a hard worker? Or are you a 53-year-old mom who's still making their 32-year-old kid's bed? Because sometimes that's what it becomes as an entrepreneur. Like, no, I'll do it. Like, yeah, you're making their bed. And they're in their 30s. That's what it can become quite easily. I saw another restaurant owner who was telling me, like, listen, I still make the dough. And I was like, you told me that with pride. You're 10 years deep into this. Do you want to? Well, no, I can't trust anyone. And I said, that's not a win. I want you to know right now, it's not a win. And then I was like, what can I say that's going to emasculate that thought? And I was like, you're a 52-year-old mom. And he's like, oh, shit. Because that's the only thing that'll break through sometimes. People feel a level of like, I'm a man. I did this. Or even with, guy or girl. I'm a bad bitch. I did this. It's like, cool. Not cool. You have to kind of shake the trees. That's not the win. If people aren't posting up their own wins, if this business isn't growing, if they're not more financially healthier as a result of this effort, then you're a glorified employee. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Now, there is a romance to the one pizza guy on the oven, alone, making every pizza himself. Typically has 3 people on staff. If I'm talking about the amount of change in the world, you're going to have certain people come in and have a great dining experience. And then you close at someone's birthday and you're not there for them. Or you could have had 100 employees under your leadership, bringing more tax dollars into your town, having better jobs, learning from you personally, living your life at a self-actualized level that's higher. But because of the romanticism of the singular operator, which again, I love, I dig. People dig that romance. It's easy to sell that story on GQ. It just is. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not as potent. That's where you start to shift. When I was like, oh wow, people, because of my pancreas stopped working and the year 2002, babies have been born. Like when I butterfly effect that thing and be like, people met at the job because I opened this store, then they met, and then they had a child. Children have been born because my pancreas said deuces in 2002. That is a mind-blowing thought.
It really is. Do you remember how long it took you to get to that place where you were breaking even and then turning a profit from having burned money after opening the restaurant?
I think there was times where, you try and show a loss on taxes, so it's like weird, but as long as you're paying yourself, it's still positive. Then it was like, hey, can we show this to be profitable? And that's a trade-off. Being a small business, it's not a con or anything, but you're not trying to like show off. You're just trying to make it to the next thing. Then to get loans, we had to invert that and grow and show actual profit. So it always made some level of money. But then it was even like the part of the pro and con of what we did was we were never super monetarily focused. It was like we have to do the best thing possible and then price it accordingly for it to be successful. But never be like, is this the cheapest flower of the day? Best product possible, do cool stuff, let cool things happen.
What do you think the biggest difference was in the way you operated or led from that place where you were just starting out to the place where you were then ready to expand to multiple locations and turning big profits, and in that growth phase of your journey?
I mean, we were ready at year 4 to go, but then it was no one could give us a loan. So that made us even more like we prepared so much and had so much time to prepare for store 2 that we couldn't get a loan. And then we did, we'll give you this much money and you got to put both of your houses on the line and get an SBA loan and get it backed by the Tulsa Economic Development Corporation. And it's only enough money to do it, to build it, if you build it yourself. Like we physically laid the brick of that building. And that's when you see that much is going. And then we're like, let's just build it the most comfortable thing possible. And I know in the mix of that, like, I was nervous, but I also could keep a pretty cool head. The guy who we were working with to build it at the time was he had like a breakdown in the middle of that, which is totally justifiable. And it's scary and it's a lot of effort and money and your whole life and your whole self-value is riding on the line. It could feel that way, but you just got to put one foot in front of the other and know you're not going to die from it and know that you're doing something cool, and something cool always leads to something else that's cool. That's what the advice I would have given myself back then. But then we opened it and it was like gangbusters day one. We had done so many little Easter eggs all over the place. We had made the place comfortable. It was actually, that was the weird epiphany, is that we built it, store 2 in the heart of Tulsa. The store 1 was like happy family fun in the strip mall with booth seating. And I just assumed families would eat there because that's who ate there. It just was. Second store, our mindset was exactly the same, but we have enough space for a bar. Let's do a bar. And then hey, I like wood more than booths. Cool. Let's do brick. Cool. I like tin ceiling. We could do that at this location. Cool. We all like that kind of stuff. And then the logo was still, the zany pizza guy. And I saw a girl in a little black dress and a guy in a sports coat, mid-20s, good looking, walk in. And I was like, what are they doing? They get lost? Is their car broke down? And I was like, they're eating here? At Andolini's? And I like looked around. I was like, shit, this place is nice. I didn't even realize it until that moment. Like, it's actually nice. It was because the bar was like built by hand. It looked Bush League, but it looked real. There was no uplighting. It was just wooden shelves. But then I was like, it does kind of look cool. And I didn't realize it until that moment. And then we had to go. I was like, we got to change the logo. The logo's, hey, like that's what the logo gave me the vibe of. Exactly. If you're not looking at it, that's the vibe. Hey, pizza, family fun. Wow.
If you compare that 22-year-old version of yourself that was just starting out with the 26-year-old version of yourself that was already ready to expand to a second location and had the grit to be able to see that build out through, what would you say the biggest differences in mindset were that enabled you to feel ready to expand to that second location and then push through so many obstacles to make it happen?
I don't think I was aware of it at the time, but there's certain things acumen-wise that I developed. First off, our pizza became a brand, and I went and did a pizza training course with Tony Gimignani. The first one, it's actually not even technically his course. So if you know Tony Gimignani, who we just released a cookbook together and the World Pizza Champions yesterday. We're here in Vegas launching it. He wrote the Pizza Bible. He's been on the Tonight Show, very big in the pizza world, and he was taking my cold calls when I was asking for advice back in the day. And he was putting on a course, and I learned about all things fermentation and pizza, took our pizza game significantly up. And then I got rid of anything that was pedantic, anything that was cliche, and we leaned into only things that we were doing. So I had that realization: do your own thing, do it with all of you on the flow. Like when we opened, I put photos of Venice on the wall because that's what you do, and we played mob hits because that's what you do. And you had like when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza, like all these cliche bullshit. And then I was like, I like listening to. So then actually, the next thing I did was play adult contemporary music because that's who our demo was. So we'll play adult contemporary, and I had the realization when I was listening to Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, that's depressing as shit to listen to. Like, goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And I'm like, no one wants to eat pizza to that. Like, so then I said, here's the rule. If my hand goes like tapping my leg while I'm listening to it, then it's on a playlist. I don't care what era it's from. I don't care if it's Motown. I don't care if it's late, at the time, like The Killers, whatever gets your tapping, because this is a fun environment. So that was one aspect of brand. Fun environment, ambiance. We're going to put stuff that we have actually done or did that we dig on the wall. Realism. The menu is all killer, no filler. Genuine authenticity. Not just, hey, we are authentic Italian, which is a horseshit phrase. It has to be. Another thing was I learned when I said things in a cliched manner, I could take any sentence and make it sound real. So if someone's like, dough fresh daily, don't say that. I learned we have a 48-hour fermentation process that we've developed in-house. I have to say things in a manner that doesn't hit your brain like you've heard it before. Otherwise, it's wallpaper. It exists, but you don't notice it. It has to be unique and hit the brain in a unique way. And that type of stuff started to resonate and move the needle. Also, when we opened, there was very few restaurants in Owasso. I was telling you all this influx of business. Well, around 39 restaurants opened from 2006 to 2009. By 2010, 34 to 35 had closed. Mm-hmm. The only way we stayed relevant was appealing to a whole blue-collar base and a whole white-collar base simultaneously. Owasso sounds great. Oh, all these new people. Well, it's hard as hell because if you don't feed the blue-collar people from the surrounding areas Monday through Thursday, but then appeal to the white-collar people who are coming back from working in Tulsa Friday and Saturday, you die. And restaurants were dying like flies left and right. And by my ability to purely use ingenuity, just, okay, well, we'll have a buffet-style unlimited pizza for lunch, but I'm going to have really avant-garde pizzas and beers for dinner, and we're going to do both. That's why in this town, things like Chick-fil-A do really well, because you could be a Lululemon mom or a Construction Larry and still dig Chick-fil-A. But, there was like a wine bar pizza place that came into town. We're like, oh, that's going to really eat at us. It didn't, because they purely were trying to appeal to only white collar, but had no real pizza acumen to back it up. And it died. And that was another lesson, like, can't do that. But then something that was like down home country, blah, 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 that died because it was just an empty parking lot on the weekend. Can't do that. So this other level of pizza restauranting boot camp occurred over those 6 years. I believed I was ready at 4 years. I'm thankful it took 6. Because then it was, again, just lightning in a bottle. We opened up on Cherry Street, and then other communities were like, hey, could you upend? Because Cherry Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma is now like the Times Square of Oklahoma. At the time, it was not. And I don't want to say gentrification because that's not appropriate, but the property values went up and more businesses felt compelled to open. So other main streets wanted us to get there. And it became much easier to open when you had a dance partner that wanted you than like, hey, please let me open a pizza place. I sure would like it. Like, it just made it. Also, all my voices are typically Mickey Mouse or a Cockney accent or Funkmaster Flex. Those are like, I have 3 voices and that's it. So for what it's worth.
So you think the number one secret to your success in reaching that place where you were able to expand to multiple locations was embracing yourself and using those unique characteristics of your personality to develop a brand that appealed to 2 different types of customers at once?
Yes. I agree very wholeheartedly that whatever you do it with the biggest version of you Like no one wants to see, and I'll say pizza example, but it could work for anything. No one wants to see another NYC pizza in their town. They just don't. If you're super into NASCAR, make NASCAR pizza. And even if I'm not into NASCAR, I'll go there and feel, oh, I'm a part of something. I don't want to feel a part of something that's not genuine. Everyone's seen the very cliche, like, is this guy actually from Brooklyn? Because it says NYC Pizza, but he looks like he's, from Canada. Like, it's you want to sell authenticity. That's what people want more than ever. And then when it comes to your ideal customer, leaning in on them, speaking to them, but speaking authentically to them. So it's a weird tightrope walk because you might be speaking to you and you might not be the ideal customer. But if you speak as yourself again, but then to the ideal customer, because I was 22, technically the ideal customer was like a 35-year-old affluent family. So I was trying to make really deep niche jokes on Twitter when I first started. I had to learn that's not what they need. You need to kind of engage in the conversation, which was early fundamental social media tactics that I wasn't aware of. And I started doing that. But when they came in, they were buying this pizza kid who loves pizza and loves the author, like learning everything about it and delivering on it and selling only beers that we would drink. So that was a big part of it. If some new business is opening, be yourself and be your brand. That sounds like cliche bullshit, but the best version, who's the first spokesperson for their brand, I would argue, is Dave Thomas. Dave Thomas of Wendy's, if you could think back, like that was insane what Dave Thomas did. Dave Thomas, an overweight, monotone gentleman, went on air, spoke directly to camera, and was like, hey, I own Wendy's, never frozen patties, sure would like to have you here. He was like the first IG influencer by that logic. Like, what's up? It's your boy Dave, got some burgers, super fresh, y'all. Like, that was the 1979 version of that. No one had done that. It was always like, if you go to 70s and 80s advertisements, it was all jingles and, pretty actors like, hey, we're gonna have it today. Da, da, da. And he was just like, I'll talk to camera. No one had done that. No one had done realism in advertising before. Now it's par for the course. But if you don't, like, you do that yourself. If you don't have the person, I want to have a person win. I don't want to have an entity win. Failure points. Well, I need to, how many websites have a shitload of stock photos and an ambiguous brand? Even from brandy companies, which is fucking fascinating. You're a brandy company. I'm like, here's a stock photo of a person at a computer. I'm like, you couldn't take a photo of a person at a computer? You didn't have the technology or the wherewithal to take a fucking photo of a person sitting at a computer? Like, well, we couldn't possibly. Like, that's the level of guys, take a step back. Let's evaluate this for a moment. Is this cliche? No, well, that's what we should do. We want to look professional. I'm like, it doesn't. It looks Bush League because you're trying so desperately to fit in.
Completely agree. I want to double click on the very difficult process that you had in opening that second location and ask how it was that you then opened the third and the fourth and now have multiple different types of restaurants in this hospitality group you have. Like, did it get any easier to expand from there? And if so, what were those shifts that you made that made it easier to go to multiple locations?
For sure. Once you've done, the second one was way harder because we hadn't done one in a while and we were doing all new stuff. Again, where are we going to get the 10 ceiling from? By the third one, call the 10 guy, call Verizon again, call Cox. Like, you have your list of people. After the third one, I had the wherewithal to write it all down. Like, here's our cost to open list. Here's each piece of equipment documented. Because everyone's like, I need to open a restaurant. Well, I need to have this equipment. Okay. And then lights and we're good. Like, no, you got to have the opening inventory, the mats, doorknobs, alarm system, the POS, opening payroll, uniforms. Like, that's the stuff that people don't have written down on their first sheet. So we had that when we were doing our third store written down ready for the fourth store. It made the fourth store significantly easier. The third store was, it was like they were just begging for us to come to that part of the town. So we did it. We did it really fast. We did a few things that we hadn't done previously, and it was hard to get over that barrier. I think we assumed it would go smoother than it did, and we learned a lesson to take each new opening very seriously. We were going into a new suburb that was not forgiving. Like, we have a line out the door the first day, and people are like, this is bullshit. I'm not gonna wait. I'm waiting an hour for pizza. I'm like, you can see the whole oven's filled. with pizzas. There's nothing else that can be done. Well, do something. I'm like, sir, I'll pay you back. Like, I want my pizza now. Oh, I'm not a cheapskate. I don't want it for free. I'm like, and I've learned lessons. Like, in that moment, I said to the guy, what can I do to make this right by you? Well, nothing. I'm like, okay. And now I'm like, now I know that's the phrase to kill that argument. What can I do to make this right by you? Well, I want it for free. Okay, great. Cool. Or it already is free. I'm just angry. I want to went. But most of the time, if someone's in the negative Nancy seeking to complain, that one statement, when I saw that, it diffused the situation. Like, remember that forever. What can I do to make this right by you? And my superpower, if there is one here, is I remember shit when it works. Some people forget. I'm like, oh, that shit worked. Write that down.
I love that way to diffuse an angry customer. How can I make this right for you? We'll use that.
Here.
The other that I see work really well is when an angry customer asks for the manager or the owner, and then the manager or owner comes over and they seem even more upset by whatever went wrong for that customer than the customer is. And the customer sees their escalating anger, like, it's unacceptable that we didn't get this right for you. I'm so sorry. I'm going to check exactly who it was that screwed this up. And then the customer almost feels like they have to dial it back and calm down because they've created this angry response in the owner and they feel badly about it. And then the situation just automatically gets diffused. Once they feel heard and seen for what went wrong, they don't feel the need to be that negative Nancy that causes a scene in the restaurant anymore.
I absolutely agree. I call that the inversion dynamic. If you invert the expectation of the moment, then you'll get the inverted response. To your point, I've documented that too. Like, we have to have an inversion dynamic scenario. If they're like, hey, there's a hair on my food. Oh, that sucks. You want like free food now? They're going to be like, no, you need to do something about this. If you're like, oh, a hair? That is, to your point, completely unacceptable. I can't believe this, and truly believe it. Like, it's unacceptable, but this is not normal. Oh, okay. Well, I understand. Like, hairs happen. So yeah, it's the inversion dynamic there. And then the SOP of anytime there's a problem is what I refer to as host. Hear them out, like hear them, fully offer a solution to the problem that's not like a Band-Aid to a flesh wound. Solve the problem, because I don't want a freebie. I want to know that you're doing something about this. Like, oh, we know why this happened, and we're going to work. This is what we're going to do, because thank you for telling us. And the last one's thank. So hear them out with empathy.
Offer a solution.
Like, okay, I'm going to comp this meal in full. Like, hey, you ruined my daughter's wedding. Here's free garlic knots. That is not a solution. It's like, solve it. This went late because of this and this. Thank you for pointing this out to us. I appreciate you emailing us. They're like, you are a garbage person. I hate you. You should die. Thank you for telling me that. I now have awareness of how you feel. And that's the thank you at the end.
Yeah. That is brilliant. I'm going to have to teach the host
host
framework
method
in future videos. Is that a Mike Bausch original?
I've heard different variations of it, but I wrote that down as host. I then learned some other point that I think Chili's is something akin to it, but I wrote host like in 2012.
I love it. So a question I get a lot, Mike, is when will I be ready to open that second location? Like, how do I know that my first location is successful enough that I'm able to make that leap to open the second? What would you say to the restaurant owner that's asking themselves that question or asking me that question?
Here's the very finite, no BS structural answer to that. First and foremost, you are going to take everything that you do in a day and time map it. I woke up, I go in, I open, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this, I answer this email, I put in this order, do all that. You document every single thing that you did. And then you will SOP it down. So let's say it's you placed a produce order. You're going to do a loom of you placing the produce order. If it's how I open a store and I do it some particular way, you're going to film it, how you do it. And you're going to have that saved somewhere, the video of you doing it documented. Then you're going to delegate each task out to someone to do. You're going to watch them do that task and verify it. Not just say, now you got it. Like, no, you're going to watch them do it and verify that they do it. And if they do something incorrect, you're going to do it again until they do it correct. So now you have every single thing that you do documented in full. Now that everything has been done, documented, and verified, you're going to have certain KPIs in place. Like, I'm going to check the videos to make sure that this is done. I'm going to look at the projected schedule and make sure that this occurs. There's certain things that you're going to have that are guardrails, that if something goes out of those guardrails, that you have a warning sign that says this is not going correctly. And then you're going to leave the store for 2 weeks. And if you could leave the store for 2 weeks, like, you could be in town, but you're not going to walk in that store for 2 weeks. and certain things pop up. But if it's something that you could fix within 20 minutes on a cell phone call or walking them through, like reference the loom again, go back to that. Okay, Terry is there. They're GMing right now. They can handle that. And if you can go 2 weeks, then you're prepared for store two.
That's such a clever way to think about it. Like verifying that the store can run completely without you through first documenting, then delegating and setting key metrics for each of the things that people are responsible for, and then leaving for 2 weeks and seeing whether the place burns down while you're out of town. Would love to also learn more about how you think about building that founding team at the first location that are the types of people that are able to run with the owner responsibilities that you're delegating to them. What is it that you look for in members of each new location's team? And what are some of your favorite questions for assessing whether they have those traits or skills?
Great. So I didn't do this when I started. I just did it by intuition, but now I have it defined into core values. And this is something I teach others is like, define your core values. It sounds like total corporate gobbledygook, but it does matter. Like, so my core values are that they're passionate, like they dig the food and the place and the brand. They're ethical. I don't think that they're gonna steal money or hit on the hostess. They are competitive, like they're trying to beat not just the store down the street, not just another Andolini's, but themselves from last year or last week. That they're effective. They truly seek to do the thing that's going to move the needle. And last but not least, they're fun. People don't want to kill themselves when they work with this person. And then if they have those 5 core values, the 2 most important aspects of it is that they get it and they want it. They, like a 15-year-old could have all those core values, but they just don't get the job. An 85-year-old could have all those core values, but they're like, yeah, I don't want to be here. So you have to get it and want it. So I seek those out of anyone that we're hiring, and I don't seek to hire GMs anywhere from in the company, because I do not believe it's possible to be captain of the football team your first day of freshman year. It has to be ingrained and take some time. I'll hire a front of house manager, I'll hire a kitchen manager, but no GM is hired on the spot, no matter how good they are. And also the corporate people typically don't work out, because corporate training is typically to be automatons. At 8:15 you hit this, at 8:30 you do this, and I need people who have some awareness of autonomy and moving the needle on their own to pull it off in this type of environment. So that's what I seek. When I started, you just have people, and hopefully they're just down for the down. They're like, I dig what you're doing, and they might not, you don't have the training, they don't have the acumen, but everyone has the most important part, which is figure it out mentality. People that last have figured out mentality, and because they dig the mission and just the vibe, you'll get pretty far with that David versus Goliath mindset. Like, hey, we're all doing something here, and it's kind of cool, right? If you have people that buy in on that, yes, you could get a lot out of people that are not trained to be high level, but they will act high level. And you can't throw money at logistics. You just can't. You have to be logistics. You have to have caring. You can't say like, well, do you care now? Here's an extra 20K. Theoretically, you would think it would work. It doesn't. And I was saying this to you earlier, like how much do football players in high school get paid? Nothing. And they're showing up before school to watch game film and staying after late, because at that point, the most powerful thing is ideology. Ideology is more powerful than reward. It's more powerful than punishment, and it's more powerful than coercion. Ideology is what you want, and building a brand with a mission, which, here's a story that relates to it. I and my brother are big, I'm going to say this no matter what, I'm not trying to be self-congratulatory. We do a lot of donations. We don't talk about it. Absolutely don't talk. There's things like we do charity, like, hey, donate to our raffle. We'll do that all day. But there's a lot of stuff that we do that we don't advertise. That's just us. We just believe in it. That's our thing. So we took 40 of our most tenured employees that were not managers and brought them into a room with a facilitator for 8 hours and paid them each $300 to just be in a room for 8 hours for this guy to ask them, why do you work here? Why do great people leave? Why do great people stay? All sorts of questions about their whole ethos, about the job and what they believe in it, to see what happened. I did not expect the answer would be, when I came out of it, well, a big reason why I'm here and why I stay here is because I see how much you guys donate and don't talk about. And that goes out the door in the back room, and I know it's getting comped, and that we never advertise it. I didn't plan that out, but this attempt to be altruistic without credit was an insanely smart financial move because it reduced attrition. It was never my intent. And that shows that people want to, that was proving the ideology had subconsciously, not subconscious, but overtly related to this workforce. So whatever it is that you're doing, if it's coming from a place of true, earnest, let's go and let's do some cool shit, you will get further. You just will, either by osmosis or by natural intent. It just occurs that way.
That's such a good insight, that it was the donations you were making to these causes that they knew were being donated, but it wasn't because it was being advertised. It's because they would pick up on it. They made them feel like they were part of this bigger mission to support their community and to help all of these different causes locally that they cared about. It made their work more meaningful because they saw that in addition to building the successful business with you, they were a part of helping all of these causes that were the benevolent fruits to their labor, like their way to make an impact.
And thank you. And what's truly, I mean, it's something to be keenly aware of when you're dealing with the new modern workforce is you have to deal with a workforce that wants to self-actualize. They want to be at the highest tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, day one. If you went 40 years ago, they're looking to provide food and shelter in their Maslow's hierarchy of needs, maybe acceptance and the whole. So I don't know how many, if you're versed in Maslow or not, look up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the top of it is self-actualization, which is your life has meaning and you're bringing meaning to others. There's a pro and con. People, if you look, I look at it as a pro, but understand that's the workforce you're dealing with, especially someone who's real. If you're dealing with kids that have never felt true trauma or pain, they're like, well, how does life matter? That's what they're at because they don't have their needs unfulfilled. Their needs have been abundantly fulfilled. So but everyone in their life wants conflict, and to resolve that conflict and to take something on. People don't want a lack of problems. People invent problems when they don't have enough problems. So how are you going to do something that is more grand than themselves and go to that next level of their Maslow's hierarchy of needs if they're already sustained to such a degree? And in that scenario, to get A players in the game, that's part of the game now, which it would not have been 50 years ago. If you wanted to self-actualize, you went to church on the weekends. Well, people aren't going to church anymore, or at least not like they used to. Or they would do their own other thing. Well, people are trying to do all that inside of work. And if you could pull that off with your job being in the realm and actually not be like happy horseshit, like you actually are doing it, not some, hey, we're doing this campaign because we have to for tax reasons, like, which is what a lot of corporate world does now. Like, we do this one thing one day a year because we have to. No one buys in on that. No one's feeling the ideology there. That's why it matters on the smaller level.
Completely agree. I think a lot of the people listening to this episode want to build a team around the values you described, having passion and having integrity and ethics, but they don't know how to suss that out in a quick interview with an entry-level employee. What are some of the ways that you are able to suss that out? Like, are there specific questions or processes that you use to determine whether somebody is going to live by those core values?
Great. So in an interview for, again, entry-level restaurant, different questions but some of them are the same. So here, I'll give you my questions. I look at the resume. All right, why'd you work here? Why'd you leave? Why'd you work there? Why'd you leave? And are they crapping on the place oh, they just didn't get me. That's not good. I had worked really hard and I was seeking further employment, but there was nowhere else to go and I had maxed out there. All right, fair enough. You moved on. Oh yeah, I got fired for being high. Okay, can I live with that? Like, so are they being honest? Well, he was honest. Like, I could work with that. That's ethical, at least. Or it's like, you have a gap in time here. Oh yeah, I just, no, I wasn't working. I'm like, you're lying. You're unethical. I don't think I want to deal with this. It's, you could tell a lie. Like, they look up and to the left. So that's what I'm evaluating there. Then I ask certain questions. If I had two people with the same exact resume, why am I hiring you? Then they're typically thrown off. If it's a back house employee, it's different than a front of house. Front of house employee, I have to feel that I want to keep talking to this person. Back house employee, I have to believe that they want to work hard. Two different things. And then I will ask this math question. I'll ask it to you if you'd like, and I'll evaluate you. So someone comes in, they order pizza and a soda. It comes out to $11.23. They give you $20. How much change do you owe them? $11.23 from $20. How much change do you owe them, Adam?
$8.77.
There you go. You got that. Very good. Now, what I'm going to notice from that question is, are they right-brained or left-brained? Are they mathematical or creative? You are data-driven. I was fairly certain you were going to get it, and you did. Now, that's not the best answer. The best answer, especially for front of house, is someone who's like 977. Nope. Oh, hold on. It's 867. Nope. Hold on. Okay, I got it now. It's 877. The question is, do they give up? Do they blow back? They're like, no, it is. No, it's 977. You think I'm asking you a question I don't know the answer to? Like, some people do that. Some people are, no, it's 867. I'm sure that's what it is. Sometimes like, hold on, can I get pen and paper? Hold on. Okay, you caught me off guard. They make excuses. I'm seeing what's happening in their brain when positioned with a conflict.
I thought where you were going with that is that the creative ones tell you that it was so good of service that they just told them to keep the change. There's no change to give.
No, that's not right. But we also have computers for all this, so it's like not a problem. We're like, am I gonna have to do this? Like, no, you're not. It's the computer's gonna do all the work, and everyone pays on credit cards anyway. But yeah, it's just seeing how they handle strife.
You're approached a lot by people that are just starting out in the restaurant business or who are established but are looking to expand. And I'm sure over the years you've seen some of them succeed and get to that place where they have multiple locations successfully, and others go completely bankrupt and lose their restaurants. What would you say are the biggest differences between those two groups of people historically in terms of their character traits or mindset or anything else that you observed that would be helpful to a restaurant owner that had ambition to expand?
The restaurant owners that succeed are the ones who want to succeed. And I'm going to say that not with being coy or whatever. Whatever you decide to be true will be true. If your attempt is to try, you will try. If your attempt is to do it, you will do it. Very Yoda of me, but that's a fact. It's if you decide to do it, you'll do it. You will. If you relinquish ego, and then people will be like, "Oh no, it wouldn't work. Customers didn't get it." I'm like, "That's ego." If you, yeah, I was trying to work my job and do it on the side. No, you have to. It sounds overly dramatic, but you gotta be willing to die for it. And if that's not on the line, you don't have enough ass in the game. If this is especially a restaurant, a lot of people when they're like, I want to open a restaurant, I'm good at cooking. I'm like, then cook. Don't own a restaurant. That has nothing to do with cooking. Cooking is the cost of entry. Any entrepreneurial thing. It's like this, I'm doing this to bring my gift to the world and to establish my worth, to answer the question, am I loved and do I matter? It has to be at that deep, dark, emotional core level for it to work. And if it's not there, it's not going to work. People don't just fall into success. Like, yeah, a YouTube star kind of is, but even that people think it takes a lot of effort online to even make it. Like those people post 100 videos to have one land. It's a lot like entrepreneurship. You just keep going and going and going. Most success is not by accident. And even the ones that look like they're by accident aren't by accident. It's just putting in reps. And you can't look at a gym and document a gym and have muscle. You have to go to the gym and lift and fail, and then it builds muscle. It's very akin to lifting and working out. Not to be bro culture all over it, but that's just a good analogy. You have to do reps. You can't look at a gym. A lot of people are like, I read this book, I read that book, I did this thing. Am I rich yet? No, you didn't do it. You learned it. Totally, it learned is nothing without action. And that's another thing. Like, action is just the best. The best teacher is failure. The best teacher is learning. The best teacher is doing it. And the ego, not ego of fear, ego and fear tied together. Like, I can't do this or I'll look dumb. It's just everywhere. Like, everyone's afraid of looking dumb. And the really fascinating thing is, like, you could go outside in a, shirtless and no one gives a crap. Like, people are like, oh, everyone's going to look at me like, no one gives a crap. Oh, that guy's without a shirt. That's the 2 seconds of thought. People would be like, I couldn't possibly. Like, everyone gets their hair ready every day. How many people have their hair noticed? Your hair gets noticed. Yours is fantastic. But people get dressed and they think everyone's going to notice their stuff. No one cares. You just fit in to be noticed takes so much more effort, and no one's noticing you. Everyone's looking inward, not looking outward. So being like failure is not doing it. And I think I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs say that as of late, but that wasn't always the case. Like failure is a good thing. Kind of a counterbalancing when people say to me like, "Oh, came into your restaurant, it was so great." My natural thought is, "Yeah, that's what's supposed to happen. That's the whole thing." Like, and I'm not being a cocky bastard. I'm like thinking, it's like, "Hey, I went and turned the sink on and water came out." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that's the gig." But if someone's like, "Oh, what happened? What happened?" "No, I don't want to. You're not going to be a complaint. You're not complaining. I need to know exactly what happened so I can make it better. What happened?" Well, this thing. Okay, what day? Well, I don't want to like get in trouble. I'm not kidding. I just need to know. It didn't work, and I want it to work. And you're telling me it didn't work, so tell me so I can do something about it. Great, thank you. I appreciate it. And then I do host method, but I genuinely want to know. It's like we don't learn from the wins. I wish we did. So the inverse, even to you, I said, because I've known you now for 5 years, and I'll get a little real. I said, you did a shitload here, Adam. You have a booth that you did not have 3 years ago. Are you taking a moment to take stock of this? Because if you don't, this is all kind of worthless. And I'm saying that to my younger Mike Bausch self. It was like, just go. All right, no, go. And you're afraid of yourself that like, if I take stock and if I appreciate it, I'll become complacent. I'll crap out. It will all fail. My life will have no meaning and I'll die alone. Like that's the thought. But if you don't say, "Hey, wow, did that." I'm not saying like go get ham boned at the restaurant. And if you want to, go get lit. It's Vegas, but taking a moment. Like sometimes I have to stop, and I did one time where I did something and I was like, I accomplished this massive thing and I had to create a frame shift for my brain and sit in the corner, like in a part of, I've never, like imagine I sat down there on this floor and just like, I don't typically sit here, so this will feel different so I can appreciate the time I sat on the floor. And that was the time I won. Because there was no one to like, there was no trophy, there was nothing coming, just bask that you did that, and it's only for you right now, and that felt good. But that's what success kind of has to be, because if you don't want to have a champagne moment, like crack open a bottle every night, that you do something big, you have to create your own version of that champagne moment. For some people, it's going shopping. For some people, it's just going to a movie. Some people meditate, but you have to create that thing, or else you're not giving the positive reinforcement to give yourself awareness that you have done some level of success.
Yep, completely agree. And I think what you just said is the number one reason why restaurant owners are getting killed as their business goes increasingly online. What you said about how it's this willingness to fail and this willingness to look stupid that makes you so effective as an owner and is the difference between those that succeed and those that fail. I've noticed that as these restaurants are being forced to adapt to this new online landscape, there's two different mindsets that people have. Either they tell themselves the story of, "Oh, I'm old school, I don't have to adapt," and it's coming from this place of fear, not wanting to look stupid, not wanting to look like they're not knowledgeable about this new change that's happening. Or there's this student mindset that you're describing, which is this willingness to look silly as you learn this new technology and this new paradigm of operating, that then becomes this huge asset because you're one of the few people that are able to adapt so effectively because you're willing to take that personal risk.
Yeah. I one of my heroes is Regis Philbin, who died recently. We were like live with Regis and Kelly. You were like that guy?
Yes.
And it was because he's guy was like in his mid 80s. And he was like, "So last night I went out with Joy and I saw Justin Bieber on Twitter wrote this, and we're having him on the show this week." And I was like, this guy's in his 80s and he's on Twitter. Again, this is like 10 years ago, but he was riding the wave. He never looked down on the wave. And I'll see guys who are like, "I'm 30, like, I don't do this, I don't do that." I'm like, then I think of the worst version of that. Like when I was in 5th grade and the 6th graders were like, "Oh, you guys play monkey bars? Yeah, we used to do that. Now we're over here." I'm like, you were here like 3 months ago. It's not like you're old hat. You're 3 months older than us. It's not, but like, listen, back in my day, we would do jungle gyms this way. The grizzled voice, like that's what they're trying to sound like. And that's how basic people are. And they want to have this thing that they own, that they are the leader of, and look down on anyone else, whether they're younger or, "Hey, they shouldn't be better than me. They're younger than me." And I'm sure you deal with that too. It's like if you're young and you're doing cool stuff, you're sometimes either afraid, like, am I going to be judged for what am I doing, or like, hey, I'm not going to listen to this kid. I had that. Like at 22, like, hey, where's the owner? Oh, I am the real owner. I was like, no, it's right here. This guy in the covered in flour. That's me. All right. Well, I don't know. I mean, when your dad gets in, tell him to call me. Like, so I understand the feeling.
I would love to go deeper there, Mike, and learn more about some of the biggest mistakes you see independent restaurants making with this online shift in their business.
For sure, the biggest thing is to not do it. Obviously, I think when it comes to sharing market share or being out there, they're like, I'm going to lose money. Now, obviously, with Owner.com, they can minimize that, but I'm a big proponent of all third party. Like it, I think if you have a bad deal at 30%, yeah, it's rot. But if you can get it down, that's ideal. So now online ordering, there's many ways to play it, but the main thing is to do it because it's a there's so many reasons. One, you're going to be more loved on Google. The algorithm likes you. You're more out there. And then there's certain best practices, which an obvious one is to take photos of your food, have everything with a photo. And here's a weird dynamic about photos. If you put photos of your food on your menu in-house, you're IHOP. If you don't put food photos online, you're inauthentic and lying. And if you use stock photos ever, you're a dirty bastard liar, because that's horrible. It's also like stock photos. I am fascinated that's still a thing, because back in the day it was like, I can't afford a photo shoot. I don't even know someone who has a nice camera. I'll have to buy stock photos. I can at least wrap my head around that. I don't agree, but I can wrap my head around it. Now I'm like, you're going to pay for a photo of something that's not yours, or they'll go online and go to like stockimage.com. And I've had people say, hey, give me your photos. I want to use those. It's like, no, sir, not on the table. I thought I would say yes to anything like for a price, but that one was all. I'm not going to be party to this.
So other restaurants contact you
Uh-huh.
to use your photos in their online ordering system.
It's only happened like twice when someone was like, I really like that photo. Let me use it. And I was all, no, why would you do that? Like, I don't know how to take photos. What type of phone do you have? And they're like, I have an iPhone. Okay, yeah, take a photo. Put the food in a by the window with natural light. Take it in portrait mode. You're done. You did it. Well, do I need to like put cloves of garlic and wine in the background and set dressing? I'm like, no. Is that how you serve it? Do you serve your pizza with cloves of garlic under it? Like, no. Then don't take that in the photo. This is just weird. Again, all these preconceived notions of bad advertising from the 90s that people are still beholden to today. So, big rule, take a photo. Next, and also for everything. Like, if you sell ranch, take a photo of it. If you sell 2 liters of Coke, take a photo of your 2 liter. Don't use a image from Google. It's not hard. You're already taking photos. Just take the other photo. So it all matches. It's a simple thing, but I'm a big believer in it. And if you can afford a photo shoot, which some people, I can't afford a photo shoot. A good food photo shoot should be around $300.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. And if you couldn't afford that, you could take it yourself. If you don't have if you have like a Nokia flip phone, okay, you should not take photos. But I'm pretty sure anyone who's listening to this has above an iPhone 7.
As you're thinking about building out your team that is not operational day to day in the restaurants, but that's supporting this bigger hospitality group, what's the order of operations in building that team? Like, which roles do you think you need at what stage? How do you sequence them?
So when it comes to corporate overhead, this could be the bane of the existence of a growing restaurant. So the second you enter into that fray, you go from, hey, we're doing great at 4 stores. Now you have corporate overhead. You got to run to 9 stores, typically, depending on your profit percentage. So it's what you don't like to do that you would have. Most likely it's going to be bookkeeping, potentially payroll. Maybe you want to keep hiring uniform and focused, so you have a hiring person who's dedicated just to hiring. An area director might be on the table at 4 to 5 stores. I think it's good to just kind of keep everything unified. Marketing, I would say 3 years ago you need that, but I would actually be opposed to it today. I think you could get really far doing photo shoots and posting yourself, and it seems scary. It doesn't. It's really not when you focus in and do it with a proper SOP. I use an app called Pally, which no one knows about. It's like Sprout Social for restaurants. They don't know it's for restaurants. I basically told them they're out of Australia. This app is so damn cheap and so effective for posting across all platforms, including Google My Business. So for restaurant owners, I am a big proponent of Pally. It's like it's an Australian. Like, hey, Pally, like that's the Pally. Pally. I should get paid by them. I'm not, but it's a. And then you're like, okay, now I have a social arm. All right, what are we gonna say? Let's have an idea. Email marketing, stupid cheap. If I did 3 seminars this week here in Vegas, I put out to the crowd, hey, how many of you guys are doing email marketing? Everyone raised their hands and they have it. How often do you email? And then the average is once a month.
Brutal.
Yeah. And they're like, well, I said, you should be doing 2 to 3 a week. Oh, no, I'm going to be spamming them. Like in 2013, yes. 2024, no.
It's such a good point on your part. We've actually seen that when you email a list that infrequently, just once a month, the list ends up going bad fast because people forget what the brand is or does because the monthly touch points aren't enough to stay top of mind with guests anymore. They're getting so many different messages from so many different brands that at that rate, they might as well not email at all. It's going to be super ineffective for everybody except for like the regulars that are going there constantly.
The evaluating and cleaning up the list is important. That's not easy to do. You could use apps like Never Bounce to verify how many people you have so you can know if your open rate's good. If you're using something like MailChimp or Constant Contact, it helps. Some POSs do this now. The beauty of a POS's email is it will directly know how much true revenue came from that send, which a lot of the other ones cannot do. But emailing in general, it's just emailing. People think I have to write a newsletter. Don't do that. Don't do a newsletter. Just, if nothing else, act like it's an Instagram post. Photo of the food. This is what it is. You're better off with that. Order now. Here's this new other item. Photo. Story. Get out of Dodge. Simple. There is 3 seconds. And of the average 100 people that you send an email to, the average of 40% check their email. So you have 40% open rate. That's more likely than not the highest it's going to be. Yep. And those people check email, and you hit their brain in a way that Instagram probably wouldn't, because they might not check Instagram that day. But email people check email every day, and they might not see it because the algorithm's not giving you as much weight. You're just not top of mind to them. So, and also it costs you nothing, next to nothing. I mean, except for the email subscription, which if you send an extra 10 emails, typically won't charge you any more money.
I want to push back against one small thing you said because I see that a lot of restaurant owners are doing this and it really hurts their email. You said treat it like an Instagram post where you can just send them a picture of the food and what the food is and an order now button. And when restaurant owners do that, but they do it twice a week, it gets to the point where the guest feels it's very spammy because it's just constantly buy. It's not a huge amount of value from the guest perspective. But then in describing how you did your emails, you mentioned that the story behind the food was a huge part of it.
Yeah. And I could totally get the theory behind. I'm putting in perspective how easy it is to send an email.
Yes.
And in an ideal setting, I would say A/B test, do one where it's a whole long story, no photos. Write it like a human. See where that goes. Write it with a different caption. Write it with the special of the week. Write it with the did you know. If you're actually building a full-blown email campaign, my first and foremost goal for the restaurateur that does an email is just to get their muscle memory of how to set it up, which load photo, story, send. After that, truly employee of the week, content that's going to resonate, but the beautiful idea will matter not unless it's done. So start with that. I look at Capital Grill. That's all they do is just photo, story, just to be top of mind. And it works. It does work. It is creating some revenue. I have one where every week it's, hey, free garlic knots are on today. I want to take that one down. I'm like, I've done this every single week. I look at my back end every single week. That turns into $7,000 real dollars. $7,000. It'll fluctuate anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 every week. I'm like, until that goes down to 2, I'm not stopping that email. It's weird what we see. So you don't know what's going to happen. So you just try it a bunch of different ways.
Yep. Completely agree. You mentioned earlier, Mike, that one of the biggest keys to your early success was finding a great mentor in Tony and basically persisting with him until he agreed to answer a few of your questions. Can you talk more about that process of recruiting a mentor and how you think about that for other restaurant entrepreneurs that are earlier in the way that you were and that are looking for that right mentor to help guide them to success?
For sure. And Tony, I I called a bunch of people when I was just trying to get recipes, and people were like hanging up on me. Tony, I called because I saw him on Food Network. I saw he was using the same type of oven as me, and he was at Pizza Expo at the time, which I didn't even know what that was. And he called me back when he got back in town, and just answered my questions. And I was like, oh wow, that was helpful. Okay, but I didn't want to bug him anymore. I just took the ideas and ran with them. Like, oh, those all worked, and I just kind of held that in the back of my head, like, oh wow, when you find someone aligned with the success that you want, try and mimic it. But I also always wanted to provide Tony value. Whenever I was around him, I always wanted to never be a fan. I wanted to be a confidant. And so when I started to know him better, and I would say, hey, I don't know if that guy has your best interest. I think that guy's good. This is my take. You take it or leave it. I never, so I always wanted, and I would never betray his trust. I never wanted to monetize him. And I think that's why we built a good friendship. And he was way ahead of me at the time. But I've also never stolen anything from him, but mimicked. I'm like, oh, he's like, should I do a bar or not? Like, you should absolutely do a bar. And, just following the guidance. There's simple things. And if you're, what I've created with what I'm doing with my Unsliced restaurant system is I can't be at your place in Idaho. I can't. It's even if you paid me all the money you had, which I wouldn't want you to do, it's not in my best interest or yours. So I created here's everything I want you to know if you're opening a restaurant or new to it. And even if you have 50 years in deep, but you're not having systems, or you're not having your metrics tight, or marketing's not where it needs to be, or employees aren't listening. So I've taken all the consulting stuff I've done over 20 years and delineated it down into a very approachable, palatable, effective use of time. And that way I could be on a Zoom call, answer questions to a group, and it's an efficient way to triage. I'll get hit up by, hey, will you be my mentor? And I'll say, great, come up with a plan. What do you want out of life? What do you need this to be? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'll get a call back. Part of it is the give and take, come correct, bring value, show the work, yes. Do something before you're going to have the expectation that someone else is just going to give to you. I've taken a lot of meetings where there's never a second meeting. It's like, okay, now you need to do this and this and this. And you're like, oh, okay. When are you going to do it by? I don't know. I'm kind of busy with this other thing. Okay. Well, understand that it's not going to happen until you do that. So now with the course, it's modular. It's video. But if I was to walk into someone's restaurant, this is everything I would say and do. It's everything thought about, dedicated, really leaned in on. Here's exactly what I would say to perfection. And now here's the tool to perfection. And then come back and talk to me with your questions about it. And there's accountability and all that. So I would say if someone is, let's say I want to be a real estate agent in Sheboygan. Well, find another real estate agent that kind of has the same vibe of what you're doing in some other part of America. Oh, I like how they posted that. I like what they're doing there. I like their logo. Mimic it. Even befriend them. Even offer to hey, I'd love to send you dinner. I just had 5 questions.
Yeah.
Do that. Provide value. Be a support system. Comment on their post. Hey, what else? And even say the question. What can I do to help you? And you might be surprised at the answer. This is a big thing I believe about building rapport with vendors. To help a vendor is going to help yourself. So with Roma or whoever I'm in business with, instead of saying, hey, give me stuff at cheaper prices, I'll say, what are your goals right now? If they're a big company, they might say, oh, our Q2 goals is to sell at that 100,000 cases. Yeah. Okay, what if I was able to get this school to buy stuff? Or they might say, we need 20 new customers. Well, I could do a social media post about why I like you guys. There's something I could be doing to help you get to your goal if I know your goal. And now I've established myself that I have value to your goal. And now it's a give and take. And that makes them a partner instead of what most inter-business relationships are, which is very pariah-based. The way people look at Yelp, and I will not apologize to to the not good people of Yelp is that they're a pariah. They don't care if your restaurant lives or dies. They don't care about their Yelp ads. They're like, we really need to help restaurants. No one believes that about Yelp. I think with like certain companies that they actually do give a crap. And that's who I consider a partner. Now, everyone's trying to make money, but it's can we make money together in a mutually beneficial way? And actually asking the question and actually caring about the other is the best way to care about yourself.
When I heard you say that in another interview, how you viewed mentorship more as something that you pick somebody that's achieved the result that you want and you observe them. You don't expect them to be in this constant dialogue with you, guiding you through every little step, but you study what they did because success leaves clues. And you're able to then model their success and achieve similar success through basically copying what they did and putting your own spin on it. I think that is such an important thing for people to understand that really resonated with me, because I think when most people hear some of the folks that I've learned from or that I could consider mentors to me, they envision that it was like this relationship where that person was every single day guiding me in the right direction, but it was more having a few questions answered like you did with Tony when you had them, but mostly like this studying of them that ended up leading to such an effective relationship and so much successful learning. It wasn't like expecting them to guide me through every little step. When we did engage, like you said, bring value, come prepared so that it maximized the use of time. But mostly the value came from watching what they did rather than what they said, and then copying what they did in my own specific context in order to produce a similar result.
Absolutely. And for me, with my book, I learned from Tucker Max and David Goggins. David Goggins did his book with the same production house that I did. Tucker Max guided me. If anyone knows who those guys are, you can Google them. They're very famous. Yes. In terms of course learning, I learned from a lady named Sunny Leonarduzzi who created a whole course on YouTube and then created a course on courses, which is very meta. And she's the best at it. And she helped make, anytime I'm going to do something, I want it to be the absolute best it could ever be. So I try to find the absolute best person in the world doing it, that's teaching it, and then model behavior. I don't believe I am the greatest restaurateur in the world, but I do believe I might possibly be the best restaurateur who lives it, who's teaching how to do it.
Yes.
And that's the value prop. I'm very good at teaching and sharing in a palatable manner. And I want that for my future and legacy of what I do in business, is that I give approachable content that is actionable and not theoretical bullshit.
I could totally see that, having been to your classes at the Pizza Expo. I'd love to better understand some of the principles that you're trying to help people see and implement in their restaurants through this course that you've created. What are some of the most important things, in addition to that host framework that you shared earlier, for diffusing difficult conversations with guests, that are important for restaurant owners and operators to pick up and begin implementing in their restaurant?
For sure. And just in general, there is an abundance of information in the world. I have, YouTube videos. I have podcasts. All that's information. What I want a course to be is a finite transformation. I'm selling a finite transformation from point A to point B with nothing left unturned. So in a transformational setting, it's, okay, step one, let's get the vision of this business all mapped out. Who's doing what? Who is accountable for what? Especially if it's two owners that might butt heads, married couple, brothers, whatever it is. Let's get all the vision and the implementer dynamic figured out. Then it's metrics, because if you don't make money, it's like kind of pointless. So most restaurant owners have no or very minimal financial awareness. My accountant gives me QuickBooks every 3 months. Not a good way to run a business. So detailing how to do it properly, when to do it, why to do it weekly, all that kind of stuff. Then marketing, which again scares a lot of people. Some people are super good at it. Like, hey, we're killing on Instagram, but nothing else. Or I'm afraid of Instagram. So why and how to do it, when, what apps to use. Not like you should post, but here's what to post when, here's how often. And the beauty of a course is I could just change the video. If the algorithm was changing, with a book, I'm locked in. I had to write truly evergreen content. As much as a course, I'm filming it to be evergreen. I'm able to, on a dime, if Snapchat becomes the shit, I could go and say, hey, actually, restaurant owners, we got to film more shit Snapchat stuff. So then marketing, then it's employees. How to hire, whether it's core values, how to post an ad on Indeed, which again might become kerfuffle in 2 years. I don't know. But right now it's Indeed. How to post an ad, then how to retain staff through staff development party. As simple as how to do a party for your staff. Then I get into vendor negotiations to really make money at this, the partner pariah protocol, how to turn any pariah into a partner, how to build rapport, what to say so that they want you to win, and also so that they cave on certain negotiations. And then last but not least, how to systemize it all. Because once you've built all those frameworks, once it's all tight, you can now run and pour gas on it, light it on fire, or you want to see your kids grow up. I know a lot of guys who are highly successful on paper, a lot of revenue on paper, even profit, but they have not been home forever, and they can't systemize to save their lives. Truly to save their lives. They have no plan for who they're going to give the business to. They have no plan for how they would ever step away. And they're like, I'm stuck to this prison, this profitable prison, and that's what systems can alleviate.
Yep. The second step you mentioned is financial literacy.
Yes.
What's the system that you have for measuring the financial success of a restaurant that you advise operators begin to adopt so that they have that constant pulse on the health of their business?
There's certain things that are just restaurant 101 that is still, I know guys 10 years deep that barely know what prime cost means. So labor and food. And some people say, oh, my labor's at 15%. I'm like, well, with you factored in and with this, like, well, not that. So they've created it. So first and foremost is education. Like, this is what the rules are. All right, this is the framework. Yep. After that, a very simple P&L, very approachable one that they could just plug in if they've never touched Excel before, or one that's a little bit more advanced, which again, that's not the rub of it. It's having the KPI. Did we hit food cost? Did we hit labor? Along with that, how to build out a recipe card, which is different than an operational card. A recipe card will be like this many grams, this much, the food cost. If we change the price of cheese, it'll change and update, live update in the Excel spreadsheet. But it came out to $4 for this pizza or burger or steak, whatever it was. And therefore, I want to hit 25% food costs. So therefore, it should be $16. Or maybe I could get the price down cheaper if I negotiate so I can get it down to a cheaper, whatever your goal is. But now you know. Then how to market that price. Well, I have it at food cost at $16, but I'd really like to get to 20. So you can evaluate based upon what other people are selling it for, what food cost is, or last but not least, if you really market it well with a lot of sizzle behind it, how much you could get for it. So that's all in the financial awareness, along with when I said that gram scale recipe, there's also just how to do a recipe card on the line that's going to go with specificity, this item plus this item, add this item, this is how it should look, which I'm not going to get into the gram measurement. No one's gram measuring on a line. It's like 32 pepperonis. While in the recipe card, you might weigh the pepperonis because you need to know the finite amount. So that's the differential to set the tone, set this. It's very in the weeds, but nothing I document is hard. This is an Excel spreadsheet and your iPhone taking photos and then just writing numbers. Once you've done like 4 of them, the rest are pretty easy. It's the hurdle of like, well, how will I format it? Where will it go? I'm like, here's exactly what it looks like. Here's the exact thing. Just plug your stuff in. That's the scary thing. And I think there's a big problem in the industry now with inventory. People are like, I got to do inventory, right? I got to do inventory. Theoretically, yes. But if you don't have recipe cards, you should not be doing inventory. What are you inventorying? Or people will have this, they're checking it throughout the restaurant, counting everything up, but no one believes the metric. So if you're like, hey, we say we're over on cheese. Well, we trained on this and we gave a bunch of pizzas away. So what do you want? All right, why did we spend, 30 hours counting all this stuff, did not even believe the metric? If you buy a program, an inventory program, and you don't have your recipes already locked, you are going to waste 6 months on that program building out your recipes. And then if you ever decide you don't like that program, you lost all the recipes, unless you re-download them and redo them anyway. So just do them yourself first. Make sure you have your product priced out appropriately first. And then have an awareness on a cash profit and loss. Like, okay, we spent this much on food, we sold this much, we made this much money, because your theoretical, oh, well, because we have this much product on site, this is how much profit we made, is worthless if you're not actually putting money in the bank. So having real, non-BS, non-theoretical, factual awareness is what I'm all about. And some restaurants have no business doing inventory. They haven't done all the other previous work. They have no business buying an inventory app that's going to cost them $400 a month, and they'll be, by the end of the year, 4K in the hole. And my 4K in the hole is more than 4K in the hole. If they make $4,000 off that app, they're still in the hole on food cost and labor cost. That investment needs to be typically 5 times. You need to have saved $20,000 because of this tool for it to have justified its expense. Otherwise, it was a failure. And that's a big pill to swallow.
Absolutely. When you're designing new menu items, are you starting with the numbers and the food costs and then working backwards from there? Or are you starting with the taste profile, the quality ingredients, and then trying to make it economically work?
Yes, I am a big proponent of write the script before you title the movie. I do not want snakes on a plane. Like, we'll write the script later, but snakes on a plane, that's a movie, right? No, it's a finite process. This is what I think will work. This tastes good. This works well. Now let's name it. Now let's price it out based upon that. Like, can we get all these items in? What's the cheapest we can get it for? Who has it? Adjust the parts. It's a 16-part process, which I document, again, in my system. Here is all of it. Then the last part is like, because people will announce a new special and it'll be a dud. I'm all about get it, taste it with staff, verify it with owners, have customers that don't care about your opinion try it. Then price it all out, fix the order guide, build out that your staff tries it again the day you launch it, update the menus, launch the item with photos, DM the news, do a press release, have a full launch so that you launch it on a Monday and come Friday it's gangbusters. That's, you put all this effort into this gorgeous little menu item, have it actually have a launch as opposed to a dud. And it's through doing that whole SOP that I found it works. Anything short of that, you're like, this amazing thing. I'm like, I didn't even know you guys had that.
Love this. 16-step process every time you add a new menu item that you describe in the course.
Yep. And so I do a bunch at the same time, and I'll do like 1 to 2 menu changes a year. But this is a much more finite way to go about it than you could do a special. And if you have 1 store, it's doable. But when you have 5 stores, no. And if Taco Bell releases a new chalupa, that's like a 9-month ordeal for them. It's not like, hey, let's do a new chalupa. Like, no, it doesn't happen that way. They go through it. They product test it. They do videos. They do commercials. They launch it. Then all the stores have already been keenly aware of how to make it. And it's not that hard, but I believe in giving the menu the best chance of success. If at my fine dining restaurant, yeah, they might say, hey, let's do something with the halibut. It's a little bit more open-ended then. But with a pizza restaurant or any other restaurant that's multi-unit, a coordinated effort is much smarter than just winging it.
In expanding your hospitality group, you've now gone into gelaterias and fine dining and various other concepts in addition to the pizzerias that you initially saw success with. How do you feel about that decision to expand the different types of offerings, and what would you advise your younger self in terms of continuing to double down on and expand on the pizzeria concept that you nailed versus expanding into these other concepts from a pure business perspective?
You know, from a pure business perspective, some of them are bigger hits than others, and that's fine. I'm cool with it. It's, we just wanted to do cool things and see what sticks. And there's a level of being a scientist and a hypothesis about it. And then you can, at some point, you cull out and dive deeper. In one town, because all of my stuff is in the Tulsa metro area, It works for me to diversify. If you have a brand and you're willing to go into other markets, it makes sense to just do one thing and get better and better and better at that one thing. If I was to, I'm happy with how I did everything, but I think we maxed out Andolini's in that area. But Andolini's is the king of it, Prossimo being the second one. So now I could do all of what I've done with Prossimo and kind of keep going and add more Prossimos. But I'm much more inclined to do that now than take on new brands. But doing new brands, again, there's a time where you throw everything on the wall to see what sticks, and then you have to lean in on what's stuck and let the other stuff fall.
Totally agree. Most operators make the decision that when they begin to expand to multiple locations, they take the same concept, but they move it into other regions. Whereas you've taken the same concept and put it in every neighborhood of the Tulsa area, and then moved into these different forms of concepts in order to maximize revenue still within that same town of Tulsa, Oklahoma, or city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. How is it that you made that decision to continue to develop within the same city versus go into other cities?
The calculated business decision we believed was not that just that if we touched it, it would be safer. And from an ego perspective, truly that if we touched it, we could be on the pulse of what's going right and wrong easier. Another thing which I didn't really plan on, but it totally works and totally is true is if one store is out of pizza boxes, the other store has it. If one, hey, we're low on servers tonight, they're very symbiotic and able to do something instead of being on an island. We could do catering to that high school or this high school quite easily.
Yes.
We could not have done the Guinness World Record with one restaurant. We had 5 simultaneously baking off all those pizzas. So we're able to do cooler things. So if we have, Zico Energy, a massive blue collar oil refinery in Tulsa, said, hey, we want to reward all our staff. Could you do this $65,000 order? Off a LinkedIn DM, mind you. Like, hey, we'd love to fulfill you. We like Andolini. Actually, you know what? We're going to do our big celebration next week. You guys want to do it? I don't know if you could do it. We need 65,000, essentially the amount of pizzas they wanted. Yes, we could do that. We can absolutely do that. And we're logistic mavens. So we pulled that off. And that's the other beauty of having all of our stuff in one town. And I just don't like driving to Oklahoma City. I kind of hate that drive. So I didn't want to go there. And then it made more sense to open in Dallas than it is to go to Oklahoma City. There's restaurants in Dallas that have like 13 units and they open up next to us with 1 new unit and they fail. Dallas is way easier than Tulsa. You got to be good or go home in Tulsa.
And the other thing that you do is you use the customer bases of each different concept to cross-promote the other concepts. Shared email lists, shared websites for SEO benefits.
Yes.
Can you talk more about that advantage that it gives you?
For sure. I think like anything that my brother and I do in Tulsa, I call it the Tarantino factor. If Tarantino makes a movie on bird watching, people are going to go watch it. Like, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to watch that. Like, I have that now for us in Tulsa. Yep. And I had a very, I want to say scary, but I had a realization when U.S. Foods invited us once to come check out their factory. We didn't do business with them, but they wanted us. We're like, sure, we'll come down to Oklahoma City. Go down to Oklahoma City. We're walking through, and this is, mind you, 50 minutes from our home. And we're walking the floor, and they're like, hey, well, meet Mike and Jim of Andolini's. And they're like, oh, like a new concept? You guys trying to do something in town? You guys, and like, no, they're in Tulsa. Oh, yeah, you guys got like a store there? I was like, how long you lived in Oklahoma City? Like, I haven't lived here like 30 years. I was like, you ever go to Tulsa? Oh, like once or twice a year. So, okay, we're going to have to start completely over here. There's someone, like we have people from Arkansas and Texas that'll drive up to us. Yeah. But by and large, we're going to start over here. And that's cool, but I was like, or I could not drive my ass an hour and a half, at least 2 times a week, starting it out, and just keep doing our thing there. So that was the predicate of it. Now, could we have done it? Yes. Would it be successful? I believe I would figure it out. Would it be a lot of pain and agita and being away from seeing my son and wife? Yes. And that was not what I wanted to do. Same thing with my brother.
Tell me about your vision for your company in 10 years' time. How do you see it developing then?
If you want to tell God a joke, tell your plans. So right now we have a lot of things on the table. People want to do another Prospective somewhere in town. We have some potential for some of our, maybe it's not been released yet, but another concept that we want to do in the south part of Tulsa. And then if one of those does well, maybe a few more of them. And trying to just do more in the market. Also, the population density of Tulsa is growing quite advantageously. So it's a much better market than most. Yeah. So I'm okay with that, and I could double down on Tulsa. I would say in the next 10 years, if a sports team comes, if the Tesla Cybertruck, not the Cybertruck as we know it, but like the 18-wheeler truck, there's a lot of talk about that potentially coming to Tulsa. If that happens, more bodies, more people, we're becoming more like Austin all the time. Austin is just Tulsa without douchebags and traffic. That's what it is today. At some point, we'll get douchebags and traffic, and I welcome that because it means more money.
So it's continuing to deepen your roots within Tulsa because of all these economies of scale and other advantages from a marketing perspective and not needing to build awareness from scratch with people. They already know your brand. They're already eagerly awaiting the next release because you've built this reputation in town of being an extremely high quality restaurant group.
And now we just need to not be Pauly Shore and screw it up which I think is too dated of a reference for you, but Pauly Shore was this guy on MTV in the early 90s that everyone loved. And then he released a movie like Son-in-Law and Biodome and another movie. And then at one point, I was like, screw Pauly Shore. His movies aren't that good. And he became like overnight uncool. He went from like the coolest guy in America to like, screw Pauly Shore. So we always say, hey, let's not Pauly Shore ourselves. Let's not go too far out. Like, we have to be very aware of our brand and keeping it. The beauty of what we've done, though, is I never make jokes at people's expense. It's always like irreverent humor. And I look at things that have stood the test of time. I'm like fanatically analytical about certain things, even in terms of comedy, in terms of pop culture. Who has never, ever been in trouble and always stayed relevant? Weird Al. He's just always there. Why? Because he's just having fun and being dorky and being self-effacing. I say Conan O'Brien, like in the way the much of the world has become divisive, he's still pretty darn beloved, but it's always irreverent. And people are like, if you know a lot about Conan, you know he probably is the most skilled at talking about politics and never does. The guy is a valedictorian from Harvard,
Yep.
summa cum laude, and he doesn't talk about it and keeps the irreverent humor. So I think that's how we'll keep positioning ourselves over time: is do cool shit, have fun, never talk down to the customer, always be earnest, and keep doubling down on value.
We've covered a ton of ground today in terms of the tactical advice for restaurant owners to improve how they operate or how they grow, but we haven't talked about some of the most trying times of the past almost 20 years of being in this business. What are some of those moments that you've had where you didn't know if the restaurant was going to make it, or there was some huge shift that you had to make personally to get through them?
For sure, you know, there's been moments that have been super scary, like 2008's crisis, and then obviously COVID, very scary, but then they bounced back. Inside of the restaurant, you know, I think when you are so dedicated to something, and my brother and I both are, you butt heads, and I think we've become much better at that. I had another partner involved a long time ago, and you know, I've seen there's a lot of wins and accolades and great things, and I think those kind of go by the wayside. And there's death. You know, we've had employees have cancer. We've had real hardcore tragedy, dependency issues. And I think when I start talking to other restaurant owners, ours are significantly less. A lot of restaurant owners, especially that own bars, they're like, oh yeah, we lose around 4 people a year that used to work for us or do now. It's a problem. And that stuff is hard. Seeing through it is hard. Become better at it and knowing what to do in those moments. You know, when there's tragedy, here's a really weird entrepreneurial rule, and it's a morbid one. Go to funerals. So is what if you listen to nothing else on my advice, it would be that one. It's go to funerals. Because I know when my mom died, I looked around in that audience and people are like, oh, we're totally going to be there. Sorry, I had this thing. I'm like, oh, I understand. And then like, my wife's boss, who I'd never met, was in there. And I was like, you should work for her as long as possible. That chick gives a shit. And if you, again, doing it because it's the right thing to do, doing it because you're supporting your staff, you're leading by example, all those things are righteous and true. If you're doing it from a completely self-interested standpoint, I still advise it. Because if you want to build staff that understands how much you want to care, show up on the shittiest day of their life and be there, and you'll have that.
Completely agree. It's interesting to me that that was your piece of entrepreneurial advice. If nothing else, go to funerals, because I had this funeral 2.5 years ago where my grandfather had passed away, and at some point in his life, he'd run a company. It was a radio advertising business, and it had done pretty well, but then it ended up going bankrupt about 20 years ago. And when I went to his memorial of life service, I didn't expect there to be a huge turnout because a lot of his friends had passed away. He was in his 90s. And what really shocked me and was moving was seeing that these people that he'd worked with from 20 or 30 years previously, like his interns and some of his earliest employees, even though the company didn't end up working out, even though a lot of them lost a lot of money when it went under because they had equity in the company, they were there at his funeral coming from around the world because they felt that he made their life better through believing in them through that period of their lives. And seeing that so unexpectedly, I feel made me a better CEO and a better leader because, like you said, I now appreciate that what we do on a day-to-day basis with our teams isn't just about operating the business for additional efficiency. It ends up setting people up to not just succeed personally, but believe in themselves. And then those people take that belief throughout their lives. And seeing one of his employees, Susan, like get up in front of this room of people. Now she was in her early 80s and talk about how Ralph believed in her when nobody else did. And this was like such a huge breakthrough in her life because it ended up leading to this very rich and fulfilling career that she had that she wouldn't have had otherwise. Made me take my work as a leader so much more seriously because it became less about the short-term impact of like driving the business result and more about the long-term impact of how the people on our team would see success after the company that we're working on today.
Yeah.
I haven't been to a lot of funerals, but that ended up being such a huge paradigm shift for me.
And you see the meaning of his life, and you see how it resonated. You see the reverberating effects, and again, as an owner, going to someone else's funeral of someone else in their family that you don't know, sends the message that, hey, I could have sent flowers. Like sending flowers is good. If hey, the funeral's out of town, you should still do that. But it's saying I took my most prized resource, my time, and gave it to this for someone I don't even know. That's gonna send a message. That's why it resonates. And I didn't do that on purpose, but I noticed it when someone came to, again, my mom's funeral, and you start to like say, okay, who has my back in life? And that's what it says the message of, and that's why it matters.
Completely agree. That message is what I've found separates the operators that have the teams that have been with them for 15 years. They're so passionate about building the restaurant from the ones that are constantly complaining about how their staff turns over every 3 or 4 months. It's like this message that the owner of the business doesn't just care about the business's success, but cares about your success as a person and cares about you as a person, because that then gets reciprocated into them caring and showing up. It's something that I wish I had like some megaphone to share with the entire world of entrepreneurs, but also in the restaurant industry, that in order to have people take that type of interest and care for you and your business, you have to show it first. And in now visiting thousands of restaurants, I see exactly what you're describing being the number one trait for these leaders that have these huge loyal teams of people that are thrilled about working at their restaurant for, in some cases, decades. It's the owner actually cared about them.
It's the path of least resistance.
Yes.
I'll say that. It sounds harder. It's not. It's actually easier. It's a lot easier when you have staff that's down, you have attrition that's lower, to care about the others first. And everything I do, and everything our brand, Andolini's, and my brother and I do, has to be for the others' benefit first. And that's not just my employees, it's also the customer. So the host method is to your benefit. When it comes to the employee, even when firing an employee, it's to their benefit. Here's how that would happen. It's never what I want to say, it's what needs to be said. We've never fired an employee, as my friend Arthur Greeno, who owns Chick-fil-A's, coined this term. We take people who have already quit via their own actions and promote them to customer. So I'll say to someone, hey, let's have a talk. And it's let's say they showed up late 4 times. And we're like, if you show up late again, we're going to have to part ways. I don't want to do that. So please, you have a lot of good things going here. Don't screw it up. That's to their benefit. As opposed to like, you show up late again, you're fired.
Yeah.
Totally, same statement, totally different. And then it might be a talk. Let's have a real talk. I don't think this is where you want to be. Am I wrong? Well, no, I mean, I don't really. It's not really what I want to be doing. It's fine for now. All right. Fine for now is not the goal I want for you or for me. So whatever you want to do in life, go do it as fast as possible, because this ain't it. Am I wrong? No. Then let's part ways. That is a firing to their benefit. Same exact concept. And it's a much more approachable manner of accomplishing the goal, which is getting them where they want to be, because this ain't it. Unless I was like, no, I really want to be here. I'm sorry, boss. It's just been because of this and this and this and this. All right, well, let's put those buckets and figure out each one of them, if that's what's going on. But even someone was just like, hey, you can't fire for like the assumption of drug use, but you'll know it. And like, I don't think that you're physically where you need to be to do this job. Am I wrong? No, I'm great. I'm fine. Like, no, you're not. You're not ready. You're not capable. You want to be it. You got to get your life together. You got to. And I support you in that. I want you to go to do whatever you need to do to get healthy, but you're not healthy right now. Am I wrong? When you say, am I wrong? Very rarely do people say you're wrong. They know it and you know it, and you're just cutting the bullshit without overtly saying it, and then it's that.
It's a really good way to do it. And like you said, it doesn't just feel good to treat employees with that mutual respect and care for them. It also is just selfishly the best thing to do for the business, because it's so expensive when there's constant employee attrition and you're constantly having to retrain people and get them bought into the mission and the core values that you're describing and the ways of doing things. It's just so much better long term, not just for them, but for you as a business owner, to treat people with that respect and love that leads to them lasting. The common excuse I hear is like, I'm so busy. How am I supposed to remember people's birthdays, or how am I supposed to remember their families? Like, there's so many things on my plate. And it's through taking that like selfish mentality of like about what's on your plate versus about what is going to be in the long-term interest of your business and that employee, and knowing that they have a leader that cares about them, that ends up leading to this constant mistake of treating people transactionally and then being surprised when they treat you transactionally.
I always could be better at that. I remember like Rockefeller had a massive Rolodex with a bunch of information on everyone, and then like but he planned it. Like he had an appointment to call people that a secretary would like provide him with, like, this is Tom. He has 2 kids. This is their names. Like, hey Tom, I just want to say, like, he's the first to do that before there was anything said. Four Seasons was the first to use a Rolodex and have like a wire before the internet, like, hey, we have the Thompson party. They're here in Miami. Where have they ever stayed with us before? It looks like they stayed in Hawaii, and Mr. Thompson likes gin and tonics. Okay, great. It's all documented on a Rolodex card, and like they're putting that out there. And he's like, "Your gin and tonic, Mr. Thompson." People are like, "How did you do this? This is amazing." Especially doing that, and that was in a pre-internet age. Imagine how easy that is to do now, and hotels don't. Like, imagine how mind blowing it could be to someone when that occurs from an impressive standpoint. So leaning in on people especially let's say you want to have a big catering client, you could find someone who owns the business, do something that is specific to what they're posting online, and own that person and own their loyalty by spending an extra 5 minutes to become a sniper in marketing, as opposed to trying to be a machine gunner shooting everything at everyone and hoping something sticks.
100%. I was just talking to Mario, the founder of Mendocino Farms, and he talked about how one of the most effective things that he did is he instilled this program where entry-level employees, specifically front of house people, were rewarded if they could remember regular by name, or double rewarded if they could remember their go-to order. Because then when they would stand up at the counter to order, it would create this magical customer experience, like that Four Seasons thing you described, where the employee knew them by name, knew their go-to order, and there was this feeling of connection and care that the customer then had for that business. Have you seen any ways to achieve that similar level of hospitality and personalization within either the 4 walls of your restaurant when people are taking orders there, or online, that you've seen work really well?
I am a big proponent of making it a massive deal if there's a review where they say the person by name. If they're like, Becky was amazing, I'm like, everyone screenshot it, post it on 7 shifts to every employee. Look at what Becky did. And now I'm not saying, look at what you didn't do. I'm saying, look at, you get my attention and affection when you do this. If you're looking for daddy's approval, that's how you get it. And I'm not saying that to be like condescending, but truly, like, some people are like, I want to know I'm doing a good job. That's how it looks. That's what it looks like. When someone's so stoked about you that they announce your name to the world. So that's the goal. That happens through your actions, and you might have to do it to 100 people for it to happen once. But if she gets that notoriety, she's probably had at least 50 people know her name.
Are you having your managers trained to check their reviews on a daily or weekly basis?
I do that part.
Oh, all you. So you're watching the reviews across all of your locations, and then anytime you see an employee mentioned by name in a positive review, you're posting it to 7 shifts where all of your employees are checking every day for their scheduling and recognizing them for having created that experience.
Yes.
Brilliant.
I take reviews very seriously. I use certain apps like Ovation to incentivize more positive reviews and to provide loss prevention on negative reviews. I look at all negative reviews and respond to all negative reviews personally. Positive reviews, I will go through and give like, I just feed the algorithm by saying, thank you, right on, that's cool, way to be, on any of them. And sometimes I'll be very tired late at night and I'll try and have fun with it. Like, so it's like, this place is the best. You are. Whatever fun thing is going to resonate and kind of hit the brain grapes in a different way.
You have a huge amount of reviews, like thousands across the locations, and you're getting new ones constantly. How do you justify to yourself spending so much time in responding to each of these reviews individually? We're probably talking dozens every week.
It's like 20 minutes. It's bullshit. It's not that much. Like the negative reviews, I'll see like 5 reviews come in, and I'll deal with anywhere from like 1 to 4 negative reviews a week across all the brands. For every one, our average is like 50 positive, 1 negative. So, and then I could analyze the positive or the negative and then say, hey, I need a response from this store about what happened here. And then it's going to matter more if the owner is responding. I'll have it where someone says something negative. They're like, just talk to Mike. Mike will fix it. Or I've never had a problem, but whenever I did, Mike fixed it. Like, that's the way I want that to feel. It's not, I look at myself, not the 50-year-old mom doing the 30-year-old's job. There's a value in saying, hey, the buck stops with me and I give a shit, so that they know that it wasn't like, oh, if the owner only knew. It's like, I do know, and I'm sorry, and here's why I'm going to make it right.
Do you use your managers to do any other online presence management, if not reviews? Are they helping you post on Instagram or replying to emails?
So they can respond to the reviews in Ovation that are negative. So we're already doing a lot there. When it comes to marketing, I take the photos, I do the posts. I have a social media thread with all my staff to do contests. Hey, give me a solid post for the week. And then I'll choose whatever is going to be the winner. For my catering brand and for our fine dining restaurant, both of the leaders of those 2 groups want a presence. So I allowed them. And Pally's really great at that. Like, going back to this app that I love, it allows a singular manager to be a part of that brand and then post without having access to Facebook, but they can post to Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is. And so, and I can send it for approval or I give them autonomy. So I give them autonomy. It even you can write a post in it and then hit AI enhance. Not because it comes with horrible copy, but it'll come up with like really good solid hashtags. So like, indulge in the flavors of this and this and this. I'm like, get rid of all that, rewrite it. But now like to write about 2 paragraphs explaining the thing. And then the 7 hashtags it comes up with were typically good, and so I'll rely on that for copy, because that was my failure point before. It's like, I just can't I have a personal rule that I cannot write an emoji. Like, I know I said the Regis Philbin thing and riding the wave, like, I want to let words do work. I do not feel, and a winky face is like my vibe. So, I'm sorry. I'll write winky face out loud. Like, I'll write the word winky face before I will use a winky face emoji.
I'd imagine some of that's personal preference, but the other part of it is you know your customer fucking well. Like the way you were describing them earlier, you knew their exact profile, this affluent family or this blue collar worker, and the different types of psychologies that they had to buy Andolini's when they did. What was it that led to that clarity about not just one customer profile that you have, the families that are affluent in the evenings, but the other profile of blue collar workers, and how to appeal to the psychology of each of those different personas?
Well, I think I'm a big proponent that you have to have an ideal customer avatar, a primary ICA, and then I call it a satellite ICA. So your primary ICA, if your primary ICA for your store is, 40 to 50 affluent, you're going to be using and owning Instagram as your primary. But then the satellite ICA might be catering. So then I'm going to be having a presence, not so much posting, but DMing on, let's say, LinkedIn. And then if I have a suburb that has, 45 to 60-year-old crowd, I'm going to do my primary, but have the post applicable to be on Facebook. So that's somewhat of that, but then appealing to all. And our real demo is anyone who believes themselves to be a pizza aficionado for Tulsa. That's the true psychographic. If someone was like, I get pizza, whether they're 20 or 80. That typically is 25 to 55. And that person all of these things fall into the realm of either convenience or experience. We have to be the number one experience. No one says, hey, you know what? Tonight, let's go to the second best pizza place in town. They say, I want to go to the best, and we have to fulfill that. Now, on top of that, we still want to be convenient to a degree, but when it comes into the convenience game, like, hey, we're the best priced and the most convenient. people, if I say that like in pizza, who's that? Most people say, oh, it's Domino's, it's Little Caesars. They're the most convenient. They're not. Who's kicking their ass right now? Listener, you listening right now, who's kicking the ass of Domino's and Little Caesars? Pause. Gas stations. Gas stations are kicking the shit out of those guys right now because they're all in a race to the bottom. And who's the most convenient? Quick Trip, Casey's, 7-Eleven. They have pizza. They have pizza. And it's like, do you want some pizza? You don't really give a shit? We're a gas station. And they've gotten pretty good at making pizza. Pretty darn good at it. So if you're looking for basic pizza, they're contenders. I don't want to fight someone who has 40 locations in my town that also provide another service like getting gas. So I have to be the premier choice. And it's easier to fight 4 premier options than 400 mid options.
You were in your early 20s. So what was it that made you realize that your ideal customer at that first location was affluent and 40 to 50 years old?
It was purely just looking at who was walking in. Like and it was an awareness of like, hey, who just moved into this town? I'd like to say I'm some marketing genius, but it was just, that's who's walking in. All right, do more of that. But even at that, I was horrible. Like, I was trying to do all these I was trying to make myself laugh with jokes online with Twitter. And like, no one's coming to a restaurant based on Twitter. Not really. And I did marketing. It was when I, had started to meet some people like, you're really funny. No one's getting it. You have to do more engagement based content. And this is again, 2008, the dawn of this. So I was like, all right, hey, what's your favorite topping? I was like, I don't care what their favorite topping is. Just eat whatever you want. I don't just, so, but then it's like, oh, I love this. I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're talking back to us. Well, I guess I'll be nice. Like, oh, that's cool. And because engagement content marketing didn't exist. Asking people for their opinion was like, why would I do that? That's a big thing now. Here's a problem I had all my life was I was trying to be interesting and not interested. And that is a dynamic shift that is very important for an entrepreneur and a business owner is to be more interested than interesting. Because if you're listening to the customer and keying in and not just assuming blindly what they like, you get further. Now, I was going based off data to respond, but not actually. And also, if someone complained, then I became super interested. But I wasn't advantageously asking the customer for their opinion until that.
So if you were to do it again, rather than starting with this concept, which was a bit generic as you described it, and then watching who was walking in and what types of profile of customer that was to then tailor the experience to them, you would actually start by being interested in a specific customer profile that you wanted to serve and then work backwards from that customer profile to develop the perfect concept for them.
I would certainly ask a question like, hey, how did you find us? Why this? What did you like? What did you not like? Engage in talking with the customer, aggregate the data, send out, you could just, when you're one store, you can just do that. You don't need to have SurveyMonkey, just do it. I was doing it to a degree, but I would have documented it more. I would have had, but there wasn't review sites. There wasn't Google reviews. Yelp was almost a thing. It didn't exist, so I didn't think it needed to exist. I didn't know to ask. I just knew to try as hard as possible. So knowing what I know now, when Facebook came out, obviously I would have been like, hey, what was great today? What are you doing? Because, oh, you're asking my opinion? A real company asked my opinion? That's what made Facebook take off. People, their favorite topic of conversation is themselves, and no one has ever really allowed them to speak. That's why social media is what it is. And now we look at that like just a given, but it didn't exist. There was no back and forth with businesses.
When I open a restaurant, I'm going to do exactly that. Exactly what you're describing. If you will recall, when we met 5 years ago, it was on a conversation where I was doing this, but for our software. I said, Mike, I have nothing to sell you. Like, we're still developing it, but I want to know, what does your dream online solution look like? And what does the landscape look like to you? And I had like an hour's worth of questions for you to understand exactly how you saw things and how you saw things developing and what you needed ultimately, that then was part of the process of creating a solution for all of the other customers that were in similar boats and operating pizzerias and then more broadly restaurants. But it was through being interested, as you described, versus trying to be interesting, that I think we were able to accelerate the learning process in getting the perfect solution down for restaurants. Because what I see a lot of tech companies doing in particular is thinking that they're very smart and that they can just intuit the right solution from their own worldview and concepts, and that ultimately ends up falling flat because they become solutions in search of problems versus listening for problems and then conceiving from those problems what the ideal solution would be.
I agree. I applaud you for it because I also was like, this is a con. I mean, do you want to tell them how this started? Like you DM'd me or something on LinkedIn, and I was all, I was like asking questions to prove you're not a robot. And then you actually respond. I'm like, all right, here's another question. Then you answered that one. I said, well, you could say it.
Yeah. So 19-year-old Adam's DMing Mike on LinkedIn. And I'm like, hey, Mike, I'm Adam. I'm building a solution for the restaurant business, but I honestly don't know exactly how to build it yet. So I'd love to learn from you on what some of the biggest challenges you're facing are. And Mike was one of the few people that was generous enough to reply, but then thought I was a scammer or a bot or something because he didn't believe that somebody would like genuinely just want to ask questions. He thought it must be a sales pitch. And so we finally get on the call after he asks me all these questions to prove I'm not a bot. And I'm so excited to chat with him. And the first question he asks me as the call starts is he's like, Adam, I've got a question for you, and unless you can answer it, I'm not going to share my advice on how to build this, but if you answer it correctly, I'll share whatever you want. And I'm like, okay, what's the question? And you said, there's this song, Thriller, by Michael Jackson. It's become very popular, but very few people know who did the guitar solo in that song. Do you know who did the guitar solo? And when you first said Michael Jackson, I was kind of scared because I don't know that much Michael Jackson trivia, but my mom loves the song Thriller, and she was telling me growing up.
Technically Beat It, sir. It was Beat It.
Oh, Beat It. Oh, fuck. Okay, 5 years. It was Beat It. The guitar solo in Beat It. Well,
yeah, you keep going.
Fortunately, I knew the guitar soloist in Beat It was Eddie Van Halen. Honestly, I would have answered it the same way Thriller or any of the other songs, so I'm glad that I got lucky there. But then Mike was super generous to just open up for a full hour on describing the biggest challenges with online ordering systems at the time. This was like 5 years ago, and how he saw the landscape evolving and some of the things that he tried but that weren't working. And it was using those insights from that call, which is the most useful one, and then like literally 100 other calls where I asked people very similar questions to try and recognize the patterns in the problems that people were facing and how they were thinking about solving it, that then led to building what eventually became Owner. But it was through that listening process that we got there.
And I was like, all right, this kid wants to know. And I value that because I started as a kid. And I was like, all right, you passed the test. You're not a bot and you're willing to do a Google. So let's go. And then I was like, all right, you got me for an hour. And I look at like Tony taking my call. There's no angle. It's just, let's see what happens. And now we're here. It's kind of serendipitous. When I saw you at a trade show, I'm like, holy shit, you pulled it off? Because for every one of you, there's like 20 that I've done that help with and they never do anything. And I was like, hey, you did it. You got a trade show. You built this fucking thing. That's wow. Doesn't typically happen. So kudos to you.
Appreciate you saying that. So in wrapping up now, I'd love to ask you a few rapid fire questions to help restaurant owners that want to learn more about the industry get pointed in the right direction. First question for you is, what resources have been most formative to you in learning this business? Because you've created so many resources with your course and your books that help other people, but like, what was it that led to the biggest unlocks or learnings from your perspective?
I mean, I've done a lot of, again, with the book, I had my best pizza trainer in the first course of Tony Gimignani. I did business level, like I got with people who do Fortune 500 business consulting for us. I was like, if this works for other large businesses, what lessons about, core values, implementation, 90-minute meetings, stuff like that I was seeing in the corporate world that I could translate down into this world. So I was in a group called, and I still am, Entrepreneurs Organization in Tulsa, and I was a big believer that steel sharpens steel. So being around that and seeing what top level people in other worlds were doing and applying it to the restaurant world and having no ego about it. That's been the biggest thing. It's like, let me learn from all these other things and see what works and then take it on. So there's no magic bullet. There's a lot of golden BBs. And that's what I've been doing for a long time. And then when I got one, I held on to it, learned from it, and kept going with it. Even like from a marketing standpoint, I just saw how well Alex Hormozi has developed his brand in the last, year especially. And I saw he was doing a conference, and I just said, I'd like to be at that. And I'm like, yeah, sure, come on. I flew out, did that for 2 days, and learned a bunch from him personally. And I was like, that was totally worth it. And then my take on it was, here's everything I would change about this. Take it or leave it, acquisition.com. And I had another 2 Zoom calls with them because that's my biggest thing. I don't know what'll come from it. And I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I know what makes things better. I can give my opinion to make it better. And if that provides value, great. If it doesn't, so be it. I'm never hurt by it.
Mhm.
So that's why I will give my take on it and advantageously shit on something to make it potentially better if the ownership values that, which anyone worth their salt does.
Yes. What books have been most formative to you?
Oh, there's certain, growing up, there's a lot of books about theory and philosophy, but as of recently, I love Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, and that everything that happens is your fault is a good way to look at it. It's a empowering way to look at things. That's one. Whenever I was like, I lost a crap ton of weight after listening to David Goggins' book, even though I did his like writing, and I was like,
Yes.
David Goggins gets me lit up. And some people are like, oh, he doesn't go that hard all the time. I don't care. He gets me fired up about stuff, and I don't believe in motivation. I believe in discipline. Motivation is the feeling you have after watching Rocky 4. Like, motivation's fleeting. I believe in discipline. Then, from a business perspective, there's Profit First, which is very solid. From restauranting, I had read like the hospitality book and a few other ones that came out recently, and I saw a lot of similarities to what I wrote in mine, but mine was very catered to pizza and cursing and speaking like myself. So I that book destroys in the pizza world, but I think a lot of people don't think it'll work in the other parts of the world, which is fine. But it's 90% business book, 10% pizza. Uh, the other things and then when it comes to podcasts, I want to listen to humor more than anything. 'Cause I think humorists are our modern day prophets. We look back so fondly on the Stoics and on even Mark Twain. Essentially, those guys are just the stand-ups of their era. Truly, when you break it down, and that's why I like listening to a lot of modern stand-up and seeing what you can glean from it.
Last question for you. You can go back in time and give your younger self three pieces of advice to accelerate your success and make a bigger impact than even you have today if you knew these things earlier in your career. What three lessons would you pick?
Besides, like the Back to the Future argument of like buy crypto and you know, I would say the thing. Oh, actually, what a lot of what I said today. The first one would be interested, not interesting. I think that would have helped me a lot as a kid. Uh, the next one was if you're not impressive by default, you're unimpressive. That's my biggest restaurant rule that I really discovered in 2010. But if you're not impressive, like the bill came out on time, they brought me food, the drinks were filled. Great, that's what should happen. If it's not, oh wow, let's come back here next week. You're failing. And then the third one would be stop and appreciate. Stop and actually take stock. And it doesn't need to be, I think it's a really counterintuitive thought to have it called a champagne moment because people think, oh, let's get extremely hammered. Something good happened, excuse to get hammered. That's pervasive in the restaurant industry. I think people need to find more proactive ways to celebrate the moment. Hey, we launched a new menu. Let's take stock. Let's stop for a moment. Let's appreciate what we did so that you have that positive reinforcement to keep going. Otherwise, it could be quite debilitating.
Yeah, this is the advice you gave me earlier, and I realized in the few hours that have passed since then that you were completely right. It's interesting how easy it is to lose perspective on the things to be grateful for. Like, it's just in our conditioning as human beings, or maybe even in our biology, to like quickly acclimate to the current situation and immediately get back on the hedonic treadmill of wanting more or wanting better. And it's so powerful to be able to take a moment to appreciate all that's happened or all that's gotten better. And it's actually, well, I told you at the time I was scared of getting complacent, and that's why I didn't do it that frequently. I've realized now that like having that gratitude for the distance that we've traveled ends up being empowering for going a further distance because it's this encouragement that comes internally.
Yes, and I'm grateful that we could have that moment. I wanted you to notice, like, hey, you have a successful YouTube channel that looks legit. You have a larger than single booth at a very massive trade show. You have a staff that seems to like you. You have an app that is affecting lives. If you don't stop, then it's kind of pointless. And I think there's another big dynamic in the industry in all entrepreneurship, which is you will have a chip on your shoulder. Most will have a chip that, hey, I could do this, and you said I couldn't do it, and I did it. That gets you pretty darn far. At some point, you reach the top of the mountain, and now you're just being angry to be angry. And I'm thankful for the anger. I'm thankful for the hey, I'm going to show you. At some point, the hammer, the you have like a pick to keep climbing up the mountain. You have your hiking shoes to keep getting to the top of the mountain. At some point, you reach the top of the mountain, and now you have to be called and pulled like a hot air balloon to go into the atmosphere by something else. And you could, the hiking stick and pick and shoes, you're thankful they got you up to the hill, but they're gonna do nothing for you to get to this new level. And that's where being called to a higher purpose, to do grander things that matter to the zeitgeist of the world, as opposed to proving that one person who said you couldn't do it wrong. That has a shelf life, and want to go for that next thing. That's what I want. And I'm not saying this as a plug, but I want the future to be that not only are we helping people have great family experiences with our food, but also that with my book or with my course, I'm now able to help someone on the other side of the world fulfill their destiny that could not have existed in the whole landscape of existence even 10 years ago. Not a million years ago, not 100 years ago, not even 10 years ago. It doesn't now. And I'm very fortunate to be alive in this day and age. And now I want to use that and monetize it, but also actualize it, because there's things that can be accomplished. And that's the hot air balloon that I find myself on today.
Having seen so many operators that have had that aha moment with you in your courses, even the people that walked up to you today and were like, Mike, that was awesome. I very much see this next chapter of your manifestation being a huge success, and I'm excited for you. So for those listening, make sure to check out Mike's new course. I'm going to be buying it myself as I learn more about restaurant operations, because I think there's nobody better to learn from than Mike on this topic. It's somebody I've already learned so much from. So Mike, where can people go if they want to continue learning from you?
From the course perspective, if you have an independent restaurant and you want to have more efficiency, not just like avoid pain, you want to be the most efficient, best version of yourself possible, then go to getunsliced.com. It's a few very basic questions. You'll be done in 2 minutes, and then it'll schedule a call with a member of my team or me to evaluate if this makes sense for you. There's no pressure. There's nothing else. Go to getunsliced.com. Also, there is my free book, like my real bookie book for free with an added chapter. So even if you're just on the email list, I'm giving you value there. Other stuff that I have freebies on. And then if you just have a question or you just want to say what up, go to @Mikey Bausch on Instagram, MikeYBausch. I'm there and I will reply. It is not a bot.
Looking forward to taking it myself as I learn more about the operation side of the restaurant business, and really appreciate you joining for this interview.
Right on. Very cool.